So at the risk of being redundant, we are going to do a new scope mounting video. This is kind of going to go under the whole stuff Al does heading. I realized I was up mounting a scope, and I've changed a bunch of things since I did my first scope mounting, lapping, and mounting tutorials. So we're going to do another one. I'm just warning you up front. There are things that are different, but to give you fair warning, this is a scope mounting video. If you don't have any questions or anything that you're wondering about or not interested in another scope mounting video, then please, by all means. My contention in this world is, and has always been, that a large percentage of the scope problems that people have are not scope problems at all. I have actually been party to situations where people have brought me a handful of stuff and said, I've sent this scope back to, name your company, I'm not going to name one, 3 times and they can't fix it. And they keep telling it's okay and blah, 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 blah. I've seen this happen with heavier scopes. More than once. I say, well, I'll go look through it. Well, come to find out the bases are loose. And the bases don't have to be loose for them to want to move around. So I'm going to pan down here, and we're going to show you some things that have changed. Some things, see if I can get the light right here. I might have to turn off one of these lights because things just get too flippin' bright. And I understand that, and this camera will pick up in the utter darkness. So, that streak you see on there, not really a streak of anything, that's just grease and oil. So, I'm going to show you, I'm using methyl ethyl ketone to degrease everything. I think I'm going to pick, I should pick this up just enough. We don't have to see my mentholated merthiolate. Actually, that is pure unadulterated sheep stink. Ain't no merculated, mentholated, nothing. So that strip right there, I degreased the scope already. I didn't think you needed to sit here and watch me degrease a scope. I'm using a Q-tip and methyl ethyl ketone in an absolutely prohibited way. If you do this in the state of California, they'll probably come out and lock you up because I am breathing these fumes most abundantly. I could die right here on video from breathing these fumes. Wow. Now there's a kind of a scary thing. I assumed this was Cerakote, and Cerakote is tougher than woodpecker lips. Whatever this is, it ain't. Because I just buggered it up by hitting it with MEK. I will have to cover that all up. Well, at least I know that I'm going to get a good bite, but man, you live and learn, and when you live and learn on video, it can be somewhat discombobulating. So now I can't touch that. Now I take some of this here Marine Adhesive Sealant Fast Cure 5200. This is my new thing, and this has been a change. This is one of the things that you will not see on any of my earlier stuff because I used to epoxy these down. I have known for years that something had to be done. That we had a problem and something had to be done. So I have been, I didn't open this thing earlier, I have been epoxying scopes down for a long time. Epoxied and pinned is a pretty good solution to eliminate scope movement. I say pretty good. It ain't 100%. So far, 15, 18 uses of this, and I haven't had a failure yet. Cross my fingers. That doesn't mean a whole lot. Still would be considered anecdotal in any circles. But suffice it to say, this is my new glue. Because I've had so many epoxy failures that I am now using this for my glue to glue bases down. The other thing that's kind of neat about this, it's been said before that the best gunsmith is the one who covers his mistakes best. And I know in the concrete world, we're famous for saying, no, 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 that's not a mistake, that's a feature. So, in that light, this white glue, when I first started using it, I thought, oh, this is going to be kind of a hard thing to sell, because when it leaks out and I clean it up, it wants to leave a little ring. What I mean by a little ring is it wants to show a little white up underneath there. And it does. That part of the paradigm is true. But here's the deal. I have been very successful, and I mean this in the best possible way. I'm not fooling anybody, but I've done a number of these and I've changed my approach to, by the way, I used a white adhesive so that all and sundry, anybody, anywhere, just checking this again to make sure. Don't think I'm going to be able to take this. No, I'm not. I want to put a little bit on this opposing surface. But what I was leading up to, what I was trying to say is, I tell people straight up, listen, I put a white stuff on there so that you can see and you can check the joint. And even though you see a tiny white line, I use that as backup. If you ever see a gap in that line, or if you ever see anything that indicates line failure. And in the meantime, this just shows a gunsmith down the road. This is maybe the most important part. That this thing is glued down, and it's glued down with an epoxy, not an epoxy, an adhesive, that is freaking brutal, thank you very much. I don't even know how to get this stuff off because I've never tried to yet, but I know it's hard to get off. So, if the gunsmith is looking around and like, ooh, hang on a second, that thing is glued down forevermore. These non-tapered bases are a bit disconcerting to me because I'm picking it up and I went, phew, which end goes which way on this here salvage? So, now that I've got it set on there and lined up, you can see that there's leaking out all around. I'll clean that up. So the next thing we do, now that we've got this degreased and mucked up with the white stuff is, I go through and I sort myself a bunch of screws. I've already pre-sorted this. And so, here's the next problem that we encounter, and this is one of the things that I wanted to make this video for. Because one of the issues that we have, I've got the screws sorted. I think you all know how to do that. I've already checked them for length such that I know the long ones, I know the short ones. We put short ones up here where they're going down to the receiver threads. And we put long ones in the rear. Now the one thing I'm going to do differently, those two I had already put some gunk on the threads. Normally I do this move right here on camera, and I do it with a screw that's got a Torx head in it so it stays in place, and I go up and I dip it in my sheep stank, which is pure medical grade lanolin, by the way. In this case, I wasn't able to do that because of the simple fact that these are pan head screws with a standard screwdriver slot in them. These are old school. This package came with old school Weaver screws. What that means is that we don't have the option of going with the nice Torx head on this. Instead, we have to deal with this slotted. These are not Weaver. It came with factory Weavers, and I'm trading them out for something that's a higher grade screw than a Weaver. But I'm going to take this one out. This is one place where my old magnetic Brownells screwdriver, that one's actually not the Brownells one, this one is the Brownells magnet tip. I was using it for some other screws. But suffice it to say that this is also, I'm just going to go like this, wipe that last little bit of make sure off of there, get that in. Then I'm going to go up and show you how we make this work and why we're solving a bunch of problems with this white adhesive. First thing is, with these slotted screws, we can't, boy, I really made a mess there in the camera, didn't I? There's a slotted screw. The trick with slotted screws is to make, if you can't buy, make a screwdriver that fits it perfectly. In this case, I ground this screwdriver, I hollow ground it to parallel on both sides, and I brought, because of the fact that I've got some screws that are so tight that when I go to loosen them, I bend the screwdriver when it's a properly sized screwdriver. So what I decided to do is make this big beefed up heavy duty thing. And this is some of the screw bits. If I turn around, you might see that some of them are modified, you might not, but it doesn't matter. Trust me, they are. I need to stop saying trust me, because in the next breath I'm going to say don't trust me, don't trust anybody. It's a bad aphorism for me to be promoting. But the problem inherent to the system is, because of these cheapy little screws, I'm forced to not tighten them down very tight. I'm tightening them down tight enough, and I'm going through it and I'm tightening them over and over 3 or 4 times, because I got to squeeze that white stuff out of there and make sure I get down. Oh yeah, there, they bottomed out. I could feel them last time. They're bottomed out, and I can put a rational amount of torque on them without going crazy. I would normally use quite a lot more torque. I'm going to leave that white stuff because it will clean up in a bit, and I'm pressed for time on this video. So now it's time to start throwing these bases on. Now I used to always do this differently. I used to wait for the adhesive to harden up. One day I realized, this is where this big Brownells box comes in handy, because I can find a big old wide meaty thing that works for these bases. So between the problem of no pins, weeny little 648 screws on this Savage setup, I wanted to glue it down really well because I couldn't tighten the screws down as tightly as I'd like to. And as I was going to say, and as I was saying, I would always let that base set up before I lapped it. And then I thought, well, what am I trying to say? It's not going to change. It's not like as it cures, it's going to change. And it's on there tight. It's on there plenty tight for lapping. So, now I'm going to pick up where we can see the lapping scenario. Go get me a lap. This one's going to be the 1-incher, because that's what this happens to be. It's very lightweight. Oh, this is cool. My Genesis came back. Finally. Haven't even opened it yet. So I am going to be able to, it's here. Let's hope it's fixed. I'm going to stick it on a 50 fart. Find out what you do. Okay, so we just go like this a little bit and check it. Oh yeah, these guys aren't in very good alignment. So we get some more lapping compound. Put a little bit more in there. We're going to lap out the bottom. Then we're going to lap out the top rings too. I lap everything. And if I have time, I guess I'll show you the contact surfaces and all of that, but I think more people know about the lapping. It's not so much about the lapping procedure itself, it's more about remember to sort your screws. Check every screw. Make sure that the front screws are not bearing on the threads. Make sure that the back screws are somewhat larger because they're longer if the receiver ring allows it. Not all receiver rings allow that. Now at this point, okay, I'm already getting pretty good touchdown all over the place. I'm not putting a whole lot on here. I'm not putting a lot of bone to her. Now this goes back in the secured container where I keep it. So, first thing is you need to sort your screws. Top to bottom, front to back. Make sure that they all fit without bottoming me out, or in the case of the back, that they don't go down through. I'm going to do one more thing because I'm a little bit Norbus Orbis here. It's kind of easier to clean these in my hands anyway. As long as I can keep the front one and the rear one sorted, I am going to run these screws one more time. And again, the reason for that is that we're squeezing out a bunch of gunka. So, go on up here with my ubiquitous screwed driver. Check this again without buggering up the screw head. See if it doesn't... Nope, it's bottomed out just as I expected. It's... oh, come on in there. Turn my light off. Oh yeah, that's still tight as a drum. So, no real necessary need for that. But this will give us a chance. As I said, I'm just a pants and suspenders kind of guy a lot of times. Like to double check stuff. I'm going to double check these. Make absolutely sure that they are... Yep, we're good. Now this goes back on here. And at this point, I'm just going to show this part of it because this is how I do it. I put the lapping bar back in there. And now I put the scope rings on. They go on randomly right now. Bada bing, bada boom. Nothing special. When they come off, every one of them gets marked. Front forward, rear front forward, rear front forward. Oh, can't make that work. So I'll probably just go rear, rear 1, 2 and put a little arrow on them. F 1 and 2 with the arrow pointed to the front. I'll figure out a way to make sure that these can't ever be mixed up again. This particular scope is not of super high quality, so it's not going to be the end of the world one way or the other. But now here's the last step before I move into the... I don't have to show you the finalizing and the tightening down and that kind of stuff. I just don't think that that's important to the video. So I reset these. We're back in the same notches. I swap out and put in... Now this happens to be a Torxie, and I just put the screw right on there, and again, a little bit of gooby, and this goes into the scope ring. It would be amazed how much this helps to not strip out scope ring and base screws. And at this point, some absolute cubby's probably going to jump in and say, well, why is he doing that? He's lubricating those screws. They're going to back right out. Any fool in the world knows that the correct way to do that is with Loctite. Well, I'm sorry, you silly little bupkis. Loctite is a limited use thing. Offers very little facility out in the real world. And it's just highly overrated, and one of its main functions, Loctite, is to act as a lubricant when you put the stuff together, and people don't know that. The trick is in the lube, not in the lock. Not saying there's not places that Loctite is hoovis, but in this particular case, let's just say, this is me. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm using sheep stink on it. You want to use Loctite red or blue or green, then by all means have at it and enjoy your life thereafter. It will work. But I do it with grease. I've used all sorts of grease through the years for this part of it. And I can say that my problems with scopes are very, very few and far between, as in non-existent. So now, the tricky part here, and this is why I'm not going to go through it all with yous, I've got to go through and even all these saddles out, get about the same tension on all of them, and then lap the saddles top and bottom. That's a long, slow, arduous grind of a thing. But suffice it to say, I do the bottoms and the tops, and that's what's coming up. And then I clean everything up, wipe everything down, and we will be done. So hopefully you guys found some of that to be somewhat informative, because I do a few things differently than most people do. And although I've done it before, this is just a refresher, and this white stuff is all brand new. When I wipe that white stuff out of there, it's going to leave a tiniest little line of white in there, and I can reach in there with a fine tip Sharpie. I'll show you what that is, because I've got a second. Well, I thought I would. Maybe they're all out on the lathe. Here we go. I found one in the pile. This is a handy little thing, in the same sense that I've showed off before that you need some silver and some gold. These are just what we call Sharpies over here, Textas in other places. This little guy right here is really handy. It's got a super fine tip on this end. This end I can use to reach up in there and wipe out that line. So I just tell the people, hey, you want it disappeared so nobody knows that it's glued? I'll just wipe it and it'll be gone forever. It'll be black. But for right now, I want to leave a tiny little strip in there if y'all don't mind, so the next poor sucker that works on this thing doesn't get completely disjointed trying to get it apart, it not coming apart. And while I'm here, I guess I've got another gun here that's in the way. This will show you the way I use this ugly stuff all over the place. This is one of my farts, and it was shooting loose. This is all epoxied and bedded and done perfectly, but it shoots loose. Now it's been, I'm going to say 400 or 500 shots. I haven't even cleaned it up yet. But I screwed and glued. There's the white line in there. I pinned and glued up here. And so far this thing hasn't shown a sign of loosening up. And, whoo, my Genesis is back. So I will be shooting her. So, enjoy the day.